Welcome to the Bald Brad Show. Our lead story of the day is regarding yesterday's White House press briefing, where reporters showed up and pushed back on the Biden administration to try to get their questions answered about a story that we covered yesterday regarding the U.S. Department of Energy coming out and saying through their assessment that they believe COVID-19 came from a lab leak in Wuhan, China. Before we get into all that, make sure you head over to our brand new website, baldbrad.com, which is a one-stop shop for you all. Link is in the description. You can catch our podcast there. You can watch our YouTube videos, read our blog posts. We got it all for you. And if you didn't hear the big reveal over the weekend, we also got a book launching March 13th on Amazon as well as Barnes & Noble's titled Trojan Horse, How the Left is Destroying America. Folks, this book completely obliterates and destroys the progressive left and the Democrat Party's ideology, because it is their ideology that is going to destroy this country from the inside out, much in the same way of how the Greeks sent in the Trojan horse during the Trojan War to destroy Troy from the inside out. The progressive left's ideology is going to do the same thing with the United States, unless we recognize it and equip ourselves with the information we need to dismantle and destroy their narrative, their ideology, and the book does just that. If you love Ben Shapiro, Michael Knowles, Andrew Klavan, Matt Walsh, the guys from the Daily Wire, if you love Charlie Kirk, Sean Hannity, Tucker Carlson, all the big conservatives, Republicans, you're going to love this book, folks. It's a must read. You could buy the ebook now and pre-order a paperback and hardcover version as well by heading over to Barnes & Noble's or Amazon or clicking the link on our website. Make sure you pre-order yourself a book today. Again, it releases March 13th. And if that wasn't enough, we also got a store here for y'all. We got merch. If you go again to our store on baldbrad.com, you can get yourself a t-shirt right now. These shirts are awesome. They're awesome quality, and they look really sick, folks. We got our own image. We got our own setup. We got mugs. We got hats. We got stickers. We got hoodies. We got it all, folks. Head over to baldbrad.com if you haven't already. Get yourself the book. Get yourself some merchandise, some swagger, and look good and look like an American patriot, because let's be honest, folks, Bald Brad Show viewers are American patriots, and we uphold the values of this great nation. Again, head over to baldbrad.com or get yourself a copy at Amazon or Barnes & Noble's. And with that being said, that jumps us right into our first segment of the day with Fox News reporter Jacqui Heinrich getting multiple questions in, not just with John Kirby, but also Jacqui Heinrich. As always, hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't already. Let's go ahead and roll it.
Thanks, Greg. John, on the Department of Energy's findings, the lab leak most likely caused the pandemic. How should Americans understand China's response here? Saying that this is politically motivated, it's a lie, there's no science to back it, and swatting down this information?
Well, I can't speak for the Chinese, and I wouldn't endeavor to do that. But just let me back up a little bit. The president made trying to find the origins of COVID a priority right when he came into office. And he's got a whole of government effort designed to do that. There is not a consensus right now in the U.S. government about exactly how COVID started. There is just not an intelligence community consensus. And I would add that one of the things the president did was he's the one who tasked the national labs, which report up through the Department of Energy, to study this as well. So it wasn't just an effort that was confined to the intelligence community. That work is still ongoing. But the president believes it's really important that we continue that work and that we find out as best we can how it started so that we can better prevent a future pandemic. I mean, that's the idea here, is to get ahead of it so that, should there be another one, or should there even be the signs of another one, we can better get ahead of it.
China, though, is pretty clearly accusing the Biden administration of smearing them and trying to say that this is baseless, people shouldn't believe it, and it's a politically motivated attack.
I'm not going to get ahead of where we are in the process, Jacqui. The intelligence community and the rest of the government is still looking at this. There's not been a definitive conclusion, so it's difficult for me to say, nor should I feel like I should have to defend press reporting about a possible preliminary indication here. What the president wants is facts. He wants the whole government designed to go get those facts, and that's what we're doing. And we're just not there yet. And when we're there yet, and if we have something that is ready to be briefed to the American people and to Congress, then we're going to do that.
How will President respond to China, though, if it's determined that they lied about all this and now are trying to paint the administration as in such a negative light? How will he respond to Xi
Well, let's not get ahead of where we are in the process right now. There is not a consensus on what caused COVID to start. The president wants to understand that so we can prevent better future pandemics. He's made that a priority, and we don't have an answer to speak to. And so given that we don't have a consensus, it would be foolish for me to get out ahead of speculation on hypothetical situations to come. We just aren't there yet.
So that was at the beginning of the press briefing, and he gets bombarded with the questions from the Wuhan lab leak, the U.S. Department of Energy's assessment. I mean, that was pretty much what this whole briefing was about. And at the end of the briefing, we have Karine Jean-Pierre on the podium, and Jacqui Heinrich gets more questions in, which is awesome and phenomenal. Let's go ahead and hear her questions regarding the U.S. Department of Energy, the assessment, as well as China. Let's go ahead and roll it.
Thank you, Karine. Sorry, I wasn't sure. Just one more on the lab leak news from the Department of Energy. With all of this information coming out, and obviously the president had ordered a multi-agency effort that included the Department of Energy to try to get at the origins question. But looking, with hindsight 2020, and now these conclusions coming out from parts of this administration, was it prudent to have at the time some administration officials voicing support for one origins theory over another, like Dr. Fauci did in a couple instances? He said, my belief is that it's most likely natural transmission. Dr. Collins at one point sent an email to Dr. Fauci that was discussing the lab leak theory as a conspiracy theory. So given where we're at now, looking backward and with respect to how we talk about these things, if it ever happens in the future, is it prudent to have members within the administration voicing support for one theory over another if there isn't a consensus at that time?
So I do want to speak to Dr. Fauci because the political attacks on someone like Dr. Fauci, who and public officials more broadly, but Dr. Fauci, who has spent his career saving lives, and whether it was the AIDS epidemic or as we are just coming out of this COVID, this once-in-a-generation pandemic, these attacks have been counterproductive. They have not been helpful. This is someone, again...
His advice hasn't been helpful. The guy tells us to take all these booster shots, right? They haven't even been really tested. I mean, they have been tested, but not on a large scale, or at least a scale of long-term studies that we would like to see. Lord only knows the ramifications that come out with that whole thing. He's also told us triple mask, right? You could be 6 feet apart. But by the way, COVID's still out there. All of a sudden, you don't have to be 6 feet apart anymore. All of a sudden, you can stand right next to the person. You can breathe on people again. I mean, it's just so silly. The wish-washy, the read in the wind that Fauci's been. But, hey, he's done everything right. You see the same thing with Pete Buttigieg, right? The same exact stuff that she's talking about here of, people shouldn't politically attack Pete Buttigieg. He's doing an amazing job. She's going to say the same thing about Fauci. The guy gets paid more than the president of the United States for doing a terrible job. And as we mentioned, it seems to be a theme here that if you do a terrible job running something, that makes you qualified to run for president or some sort of higher office position and get paid a lot of money from the taxpayers to do, again, a very bad job. Prime example, Joe Biden. Another prime example, Dr. Fauci. Another prime example with the lady on the screen, Karine Jean-Pierre, getting paid 6 figures to do a terrible job.
Again, who has spent his almost entire career fighting for the well-being, the health of the American people. And so I just want to call out the political attacks. I think, again, it's not been helpful. Dr. Fauci himself has said he agrees with the president that we needed to get to the bottom of this, to get to the bottom of where COVID originated. And that's what the president did from certainly the first few months of his administration. And we have been grateful. Again, we have been grateful to Dr. Fauci's wisdom. We've been grateful to Dr. Fauci's advice during the COVID response. And we have been very, very clear here. We need to know more. We need to get to the bottom of how COVID-19 originated, and so that is why the president directed his IC and his intelligence community to get to the bottom of this. And so I'll leave it there.
More broadly than Dr. Fauci, though, I guess what I'm getting at is there was not so long ago a point where anyone asking the question of whether a lab leak was a credible theory that should be looked into, a lot of those people were derided as fringe,
Yes, yes, thank you, Jacqui. This is literally what we talked about on yesterday's episode, where you couldn't even talk about this stuff. You couldn't even talk about Wuhan lab leak. Literally, you were removed or deplatformed from social media by big tech companies, YouTube being one of them, and now we're just able to talk about it willy-nilly. And now it seems as if it was a true story. It was no longer conspiracy theory. This is a freaking great question. Thank God we have somebody in the room that has this working, that knows what they're doing, that's intelligent. Thank God we got Jacqui, Wonder Woman, in there doing the job for the American people. You go, girl.
conspiracy theorists. So are there lessons learned, looking back about how we discuss theories when we don't have all of the answers?
So here's what I can tell you is the president's commitment to getting to the bottom of this, right? That is what's the most important, so that we can share this with Congress, we can share this with the American people. That is why he asked the IC to do its work. And right now, there is no consensus. There is no consensus. You heard this from Jake Sullivan yesterday. You heard this from my colleague just moments ago. And we're going to do everything that we can. The president is asking his team to do everything that they can to figure out where it originated, because of what could potentially happen next, because of the potential of having another pandemic. And I think that's what's most important. That's what the American people should have confidence in, is that you have a president that wants to get to the bottom of this. Go ahead, Kellyo.
Folks, if you're new to the Bald Brad Show, I'm just looking for the answer to the question that was proposed, at which no point did she answer it. And I'm really wondering, you guys, if she is just that off her rockers, meaning Karine Jean-Pierre, that she's not capable of actually hearing questions correctly and then answering them. Because there's been times of her saying, well, this is how I heard the question, but nobody else in the room heard the question the same way that she did. So I'm really wondering if her synapses are off, like up here is just kind of off. There's something going on here, because it's a very simple question. Basically, Shay, should we be able to at least have conversations about certain components of things that are happening in the world without being labeled conspiracy theorists? Should we be able to actually have conversations without worried about being censored or removed or deplatformed or diminished in some way, shape, or form? Because there's a lot of things that we talked about in the past that all of a sudden come out to fruition that were true, and we were labeled conspiracy theories, right? MAGA supporters, rightists, crazy, ultra MAGA, all this nonsense. We were told it was Russian disinformation, Russian misinformation. We were told that it was misinformation and disinformation, regardless of the Russian aspect of it. I mean, there was a whole bunch of nonsense coming from the Democrat Party and progressive left there. But let me know what you think about that one. Jacqui Heinrich did a fabulous job there. Gave her some love and support. Follow her on Instagram. I think she might be on TikTok as well. She deserves your love and support. Well, that moves us into our second segment of the day. We got a reporter here asking, hey, based on this assessment from the U.S. Department of Energy, should this be something that's released to the American public? And here's John Kirby's response.
Mr. Kirby, on the Energy Department's assessment, should the evidence that the department is basing this assessment on be shared with the American people?
As I said, if we have something that we believe can be reported to the Congress and to the American people that we're confident in, we will absolutely do that.
You said that right now there is not a...
Does anybody really believe that? I mean, honestly, if this is going from the beginning of the Biden administration, we're going on 2 years now, and this is like really the first that we're actually hearing about any sort of assessment being done that's actually given us some sort of intelligence of what really took place. I mean, we've gone almost, 2.5 weeks now since we've shot down about 4 craft and objects out of the sky, and we still don't have any intelligence on that. I mean, they released photos of the Chinese spy balloon, but they only did that because everybody else had photos of it as well, because everybody's like, holy crap, what is that in the sky? Well, it's Chinese spying on you. Make sure you give them a nice peace sign or the middle finger, because they're taking photos of you, or at least gathering some intelligence from everywhere around the United States. But it's just amazing here that they actually expect us to give us, they expect us to actually believe them that they're going to give us answers regarding this whole thing. It's a bunch of hubbub. If we do, I would be baffled and shocked, but this is the Biden administration we're talking about. And remember, it's also China we're talking about. And also remember, the Bidens are in bed with the Chinese. So I don't expect to hear anything in the next 2 years.
Consensus. Will there ever be a definitive answer from the Biden administration on the origins of COVID-19, and how much of that is dependent on cooperation from China?
We really do want to know what happened here, because the president wants to make sure that we're postured to prevent any future pandemics.
How are you going to prevent it? Honestly, if another government, the Chinese government, is going to sit there and do gain-of-function research and produce these kind of viruses, what are you going to do about it, man? Honestly, what are you going to do, sanctions? Why are sanctions not being done already? It's been 2 years. We all know it came from China. Screw where it came from. Why are they not being penalized? What's going on? Where's the UN about this, right? We always, the UN this, UN that. Where is the globe on this? Honestly, where are they? Can somebody let me know? Because I haven't seen any penalties on China for this at all. You know it came from China. Screw where it like specifically came from. Yes, I would like to know, and I do believe it was from a lab in Wuhan, but it's just amazing to me well, the president wants to get the bottom line, and we'll definitely tell you the truth about all this. Yeah. I really believe our government.
Or if not, prevent them to be able to get farther along ahead of them. So we're working very hard to understand this as best we can. Again, there's just no consensus across the government. The work continues, and I'm not going to get ahead of conclusions that haven't been arrived at yet.
Just one last quick follow-up. What agency is taking the lead on this?
This is a whole of government effort, and clearly here at the National Security Council, I mean, we're running the interagency process on this, but it's a whole of government effort.
It's a whole of government effort. So basically, you got a spider web. So we're never going to get a consensus. One department's going to say this, the other department's going to say this, and this is what they do. This is how they cover up the story, right? This is how they protect the Chinese government. This is how the Biden administration sits there and rubs the shoulders of Xi and the CCP and all those other things. So we'll never get to the bottom line of this because everybody has their foot in it, their hand dipped in it. Who the heck knows what's going on? And I would also like to point out, this really confused the reporters in the room. And what you're going to see later through the next few clips here is reporters just trying to get more of a consensus and understanding of what they actually mean if this is a whole government effort and really get more details on this. You'll see that coming up. Well, moving into our third story of the day, we have more information coming out regarding this, and we got a follow-up from another reporter asking, hey, there's a lab leak theory taking place from the intelligence community, and they've been gathering this intelligence since Joe Biden's been in office, but we got the same message back in 2021 that there wasn't a consensus if it was from the Wuhan lab leak either. So what's going on? Should we be worried? Should stuff be going on? Let's go ahead and check it out.
To follow on the lab leak theory, back in October 2021, it was also the case that there was no consensus from the intelligence community, where COVID came from. Without revealing sensitive information, has the IC gathered new information, new intelligence since then that might have led DOE to draw a different conclusion?
We, again, without confirming the press reporting on the Department of Energy's work here, and the context for them is that they run the national labs, and the president wanted the national labs involved there. Again, a whole of government effort. The work is still ongoing. There hasn't been a final conclusion arrived at here, and not everyone in the intelligence community or across the government necessarily has come to a consensus view here on how it started. But I want to go back to what I said before, and that's that the president believes it's important to know so that we can better prevent future pandemics. And obviously, regardless of what the source is, it's important for people to know that scientific research can still occur, needs to occur, in a safe and secure manner.
And on Friday, the president was asked if he was worried that China will side with Russia in the war, and he said that there is no evidence of that so far. So does President Biden believe China is neutral in the conflict?
I can't really improve upon how the president characterized it. We have not seen China go all in with respect to supporting Russia.
So it takes them going all in is that the bar for partnering?
They have not gone all in supporting Russia. They abstained from the vote in the UN. While they have not condemned the invasion that Mr. Putin perpetrated now on the Ukrainian people, nor have they made a decision to provide lethal military assistance to Ukraine. And as the president said, he doesn't believe it's in China's interest to do that they should not want to do that, to go in on the side of Russia. Now, look, the other thing is a couple things. Every country has to make its own decisions here. And we have been exceedingly clear that we want to see China be on the right side here, which is not support Mr. Putin in any way, condemn this invasion like so much of the rest of the world has, and participate in the price cap on oil revenue so that Mr. Putin can't profiteer it, and to enforce sanctions. Now, they haven't chosen to do all those things. We obviously believe that they've got decisions that they have to make. We want them to make the right ones.
Sorry.
So she's just going to follow up with that, but you kind of hear the messaging from the Biden administration on how this is all developing and coming out. and not giving credence to the idea that it could even have been started in China whatsoever, or the fact that it could be a Wuhan lab leak. It's so crazy how this whole administration has been under wraps and kind of in the dark on literally everything. And what I find interesting is that it kind of makes sense on this administration and how they're functioning, because thinking about it, going back to the campaign, Biden literally just was in a basement the entire campaign, the entire presidential run. He didn't go out and do the same things that Trump did. He was quiet. He was tight-lipped. Nobody knew what the heck was going on. Nobody knew if the guy was deranged or mentally ill or anything back then. Of course, now we do after seeing him. You can only keep the guy sheltered so much as president. But it's interesting because his administration is ran in the exact same way. We never get any answers. We never really know what's going on. It's always, well, you got to talk to this department. Oh, well, the U.S. Department of Energy did their assessment, but, yeah, sure, maybe they said that it came from Wuhan lab leak, but we don't have a consensus through all departments, as if that's ever going to really happen. I mean, come on, that is silly. Usually have one agency that's kind of heading the whole thing that sits there and runs the investigation, and they come to a consensus of, hey, this is what took place, this is what didn't take place, and this is what we have. But when you start spreading it out and have multiple hands in the pot, nobody's ever going to really necessarily come to an agreement. They're all going to have their own opinions, especially when you're dealing with a foreign, I guess you could theoretically say, actual enemy. And so that's never going to happen. But again, it's the whole idea of let's keep everything tight-lipped, under wraps. We're not actually going to get any information from anybody, so the American people are constantly in the dark on everything that we're doing, which should worry everybody. Well, what's interesting is we got the man, the myth, the legend back in the room. We got Philip Wegman asking Biden regarding China and if they will cooperate with the investigation, and he does get a follow-up question. Let's go ahead and roll it.
Thank you, Karine. Two quick questions, sir. First, has President Biden asked, or does he plan to ask, President Xi to cooperate with investigations into the origins of the virus? Or at this point, does the administration believe that cooperation will not come from Beijing?
We have consistently made it clear that we want China's full cooperation in a full, transparent way with the investigations into COVID, and including when he met with President Xi in Bali just a couple of months ago.
And then, without weighing in one way or the other on origin of the virus, you've made clear that there's no consensus. Does the president believe, though, that the reward outweighs the risk when it comes to gain-of-function research?
Does the reward outweigh the risk when it comes to gain of research?
That type of research is
I got a history degree. You're going to have to say that again?
Look, I don't hound on John Kirby that much, but that's a very easy question to understand. Does the reward of gain-of-function research outweigh basically the risk of it? Like, is there a net benefit to doing this, to where if something did get leaked, like COVID-19, is still doing gain-of-function research that much of a benefit that we're going to subject people to the possibility of receiving a virus that can cause massive death across the globe? And by the way, they're working on stuff supposedly that'll have like a 50% plus death rate. Is that actually worth it for what we're getting out of it? I mean, it was a very simple question, but again, I've talked about this time and time again. Why is it that some people just have such a hard time grasping certain concepts and understanding these very basic questions from these men and women in the room? I really don't understand it. So let's see how Phil rephrases it and see if the guy understands it. Mind you, this guy is an admiral. I'm not trying to diminish John Kirby, but for the love of God, man, it was a very, very interesting or very simple question.
Does the president believe that this type of gain-of-function research is proven?
He believes that it's important to help prevent future pandemics, which means he understands that there has to be legitimate scientific research into the sources or potential sources of pandemics so that we understand it.
Just say yes. God, somebody in the live chat or the comments, explain to me why they have to talk like this. You're just saying yes. Yeah, he does think it's a net benefit. Yeah, he does think the rewards that we would get out of gain-of-function research outweighs the risk of it. That's all you need to say. You can literally end it there and it'd be a great response. At least you're being honest. But God, it's like the diarrhea mouth and like have to like almost give like this crazy, ridiculous, I guess, professional answer that goes way out far of what you need to say. Just say yes and just regurgitate what the question was. That's all you have to do and then move on. I really don't understand it, you guys.
So that we can prevent them, and we can prevent them from happening, obviously. But he also believes, and this is why he wants the whole of government effort here to understand it, that research has to be done, it must be done in a safe and secure manner and as transparent as possible to the rest of the world so people know what's going on. So I think that's a fancy way of saying yes.
You're literally talking about a communist government. Oh, well, it needs to be transparent and safe, as if we're transparent and safe with everything that we do. So what I kind of see is we're constantly expecting other people to behave and act in the same way that we do, but we're hypocritical because we don't even act and behave in the same way that we expect other people to do in terms of government. And again, I love America. I think we're the greatest country that's ever been created in a human existence. But it's just interesting that it's like, hey, we'll sit there and give billions of dollars of aid and weaponry to Ukraine, but China can't give it to Russia. I just find it interesting that it's like, oh, well, we think it's good for China to stay out of it, which I do agree with. But I just find it interesting that it's that dynamic, and also the fact of like, well, gain of function research, we think we should do it, but we think we should be transparent about it. Like as if somebody's really going to be transparent on the technology, maybe the biological weapons that they're trying to produce to sit there and drop it on their foreign adversary. Like maybe dropping it from a balloon. Gee, I don't know. But, they expect certain shenanigans from China, which we all know is not going to happen. Well, moving into our last segment of the day, we have Matt Whittingley, and hopefully I'm getting his last name right, is basically questioning Karine Jean-Pierre here on clarification about the whole of government and getting more details about this assessment from the Department of Education. And then we have another reporter that's following up with a great question from Matt Whittingley to sit there and kind of even pry a little bit further. Let's go ahead and roll it.
Just to go back to the DOE assessment, since I didn't get a swing at Kirby, without asking specifically about that, but just more the tempo and rhythm of things, I think the surprise was that it just kind of popped in the last 48 hours. This has been an all-of-government effort. It's been across agencies. Can you give us a sense of how this is actually working in terms of what the timelines are, what kind of effort is going in on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis as to why this would happen now, why there would be an update now?
So I can't speak to, again, and Kirby the Admiral was trying to be very clear here. He didn't want to confirm the story or speak to the story. I mean, what I can say, and I would just lean into what the National Security Advisor said yesterday on many of your networks. He did a bit of a round robin yesterday on the Sunday shows. This is Jake Sullivan. Look, this is something that the president takes very seriously. He directed repeatedly his intelligence community to put efforts and resources behind getting to the bottom of the origins of COVID-19. And so, he was,
Karine, get an earpiece and just let me regurgitate the questions for you, lady. The question was about how does this whole thing run? What's the day-to-day operations? He said it was a whole government operation. Like who's involved? What agencies are involved? Who's running the investigation? How are they running the investigation? Again, just what's the day-to-day operations? And she's going into this whole other thing. It's driving me batty, man, because it's like, for good God, you're either that dumb or you got something wrong with you, man, where you're hearing something and it's being processed way different than everybody else in the room and that's listening online here to the Bald Brad Show. And we're all going, what are you talking about? All the time this is happening.
He doubled down on that and like I said, redirected his intelligence community, and that's what you're seeing. But again, there's not a consensus here. We're still going through the process, and as we are getting briefed and updated, the president will certainly share that with Congress and the American people. But the president believes that it is important that we get to the bottom of this, especially as we need to prepare for who knows what the future may hold. Don't want to get into hypotheticals from here, but we need to be prepared for the potentially another pandemic. And so, again, we've taken this very seriously. The president has. We need to get to the bottom of what occurred.
Yeah, thank you for following up on that. Are there any plans for the administration to release an unclassified version of the Energy Department's COVID origin report? And if not, why is the administration choosing to keep that assessment classified?
So again, I'm going to just repeat my National Security Council colleague who said that he don't want to get ahead don't want to confirm a story, so I'm certainly not going to answer that from here. What I can tell you and reiterate from here, as he has said, as the National Security Advisor has said many times on the airwaves yesterday, which is that the president wants to get to the bottom of this because he thinks it's incredibly important to figure out, to get a sense where COVID-19 originated from.
So does the administration first need to find a consensus before releasing some of these assessments, or why not put out everything that you
Well,
found?
I think it's basically what we've been saying. There has been no consensus, so I think they're working through that. The intelligence community is working through getting.
He was asking, basically, does there need to be a consensus to put out all the assessments, or does there not need to be a consensus to get out all the assessments? And she goes, well, there hasn't been a consensus. Like, what? Like, dude, am I losing? You guys, it is morning time. Am I losing it right now? Because help me. help me, dude. It gets to that point, when you deal with somebody that, like, doesn't know how to answer questions, or is, like, just talking about things that isn't even in the conversation, you start feel like you're going a little bit loony in the head. You know what I mean? Like, you start feeling you're the crazy one, because you're like, I'm listening to the question, I'm listening to the response, and you're almost like, because it keeps happening, you're like, am I actually hearing this correctly? It starts getting in your head a little bit. That's how I'm feeling right now. I'm actually feeling crazy, because all he was curious about was how the assessments are going to come about. Are they going to be released? Does there need to be a consensus on the assessments, or doesn't there need to be able for those to be released?
To the bottom of this, as the president has directed and as the president wants to see. I'm certainly not going to get into it ahead of their process.
I mean, great questions from the reporters, and it's all tight-lipped. Look, the way they're talking of, well, there's no consensus. Well, there wouldn't be a consensus then if it wasn't real, or there could be a consensus even if it was real. So my consensus, without using the word consensus too many times, just like Karine Jean-Pierre, God, I'm even starting to sound like her now, or heck, Kamala Harris, right? Word salad. Look, the story's probably real. That's based on what I'm hearing here, is that they're going to say, well, it's not, we're not going to say it's real or isn't, but we don't have a consensus on the assessment that was done. We don't have it from all the agencies saying that they agree with it. So if you're having that type of language, that tells me that it was a real story. It is true that the assessment from the U.S. Department of Energy does in fact believe that the virus was leaked from a lab in Wuhan, China. I believe that. I'm sure a lot of you believe that. Heck, even if it was from a market because somebody ate a bat, which I don't think that was the case, I do believe it was a Wuhan lab leak. It still came from China. They need to be penalized. But for some reason, we're going on over 2 years now, into 3 years of this whole shenanigans, and still nothing's been done by anybody, no nation. But, the UN's there about everything, even though China not only released a virus, but hell, they literally have camps with the Uyghurs. Nothing's been done still. Nothing's been done. Let me know what you think about all this, folks. Again, head over to baldbrad.com. Get yourself some awesome merchandise. Buy the book, Trojan Horse, How the Left is Destroying America. It's an awesome book that destroys and obliterates the Democrat Party and the progressive left's narrative, the very narrative that is going to destroy this country from the inside out if we don't equip ourselves and are prepared to fight back with good arguments and good opinions to destroy their narratives. Again, hit that like and subscribe button, folks, and I'll see you tomorrow here on The Bald Brad Show.